The studio lights rise in a slow burn, like dawn breaking over a city that never sleeps. The cameras sweep across the crowd, hundreds of faces beaming, clapping, alive with anticipation. Tonight isn't just another late-night show. Tonight has the flavor of a prize fight disguised in jokes and charm. From the wings, Jimmy Kimmel emerges. He carries himself like a man who has walked this stage 1,000 times and still relishes every step. The applause rolls over him, loud enough to rattle the rafters. His grin is sharp, his suit perfectly pressed, but it's his eyes that give him away. Hungry, glimmering with the thrill of competition. He raises a hand, almost modest, as if to say, "Oh, calm down," but he never really means it. The audience doesn't calm down. They roar harder, feeding off the tension they don't quite understand yet. Jimmy soaks it in, the rhythm of claps like a drummer's beat behind his entrance. "Ladies and gentlemen," he begins, voice smooth as polished glass. "You're in for something different tonight, something a little unexpected." He lets the words dangle, bait on a hook. The audience leans forward as one. The band strikes a jazzy sting, and from the opposite side of the stage strides Seth Meyers. His walk is casual, but not careless. The gait of a man who has made New York his kingdom and is now stepping onto Jimmy's turf with a smile that says, "I'm not worried." The cheers for Seth are nearly as loud, and he acknowledges them with that signature eyebrow lift, part thank you, part you already know I belong here. The handshake between the two hosts is quick but meaningful. Grip firm, shoulders squared like two boxers touching gloves before the bell rings. The cameras zoom in, catching that glint of mutual recognition. This won't just be a friendly chat. It's going to be a duel dressed in laughter. Jimmy gestures toward the desk, settling in with a showman's ease. Seth takes his seat opposite, one leg crossing neatly over the other, posture calm but deliberate. For a moment, they just smile at each other, the crowd applauding in waves behind them. "You know, Seth," Jimmy says, leaning forward, "it's not every day my competition shows up on my set." His tone is teasing, but his smile doesn't quite reach his eyes. Seth laughs lightly, the kind of laugh that floats just above the tension rather than dissolving it. "Competition? I thought we were friends," he quips. The audience chuckles, sensing the hidden sharpness under the warmth. The stage glows with crimson and gold, but beneath the polish there's a crackle, a heat only the audience can feel. Two veterans of the same battlefield, sitting across from one another with nothing but wit for weapons. The calm before the storm is always the most thrilling. Somewhere in the back row, a fan whispers to her neighbor, "This feels different." She's right. Tonight isn't scripted comfort. Tonight is the start of a comedy war, and everyone in the room is about to become a witness. The crowd has barely settled when Jimmy leans in across his desk, fingers laced together like a lawyer about to cross-examine a witness. His tone is smooth, but it has the faintest trace of mischief. Like a magician holding a card he knows the other guy doesn't want revealed. "So, Seth," Jimmy begins, "you didn't just wander into Los Angeles to try my green room snacks, did you?" The audience chuckles. They know where this is going. Every late-night guest has an agenda. Seth's smile is easy, practiced, but not fake. He shrugs lightly, adjusting his jacket. "Well, you know, the Emmys are coming up. Figured I should show my face." A ripple of laughter passes through the studio. Jimmy tilts his head, eyebrows lifting just enough to sell mock surprise. "The Emmys? Really? The thing we all pretend doesn't matter until we lose one?" The laughter spikes. Seth chuckles along, brushing an invisible speck of dust off his sleeve. "Exactly. You spend months telling everyone you don't care, until your name doesn't get called. Then suddenly you care a lot," the audience roars. It's good-natured, almost innocent. On the surface, this is two pros ribbing about the absurdity of award season. But under the laughter, a pulse of something sharper starts to beat. Jimmy leans back in his chair, giving Seth the kind of smile poker players use when they're holding a better hand. "So, let me get this straight. You come on my show to talk about your nomination." His tone is sweet as honey, but it drips with a quiet sting. There's a quick gasp from the crowd, followed by a burst of laughter that feels a little too loud, a little too nervous. Everyone in the room senses it. The gloves are still on, but someone just threw the first jab. Seth doesn't flinch. His face remains calm for a beat too long, just enough for the cameras to catch the flicker in his eyes. Then he leans back, legs crossed, and smirks. "Yeah," he says evenly. "It's a little like Pepsi advertising during the Coke halftime show." The crowd explodes. It's playful, sharp, and it lands perfectly. Jimmy's smile widens. Not in surrender, but in recognition. The duel has officially begun. For the next few minutes, they volley like expert fencers. Jimmy pokes fun at the endless campaign interviews. Seth parries with jokes about self-congratulatory press junkets. Their rhythm is flawless, each line rolling into the next like they've rehearsed it. Except they haven't. This is live sparring, the kind that makes late night feel electric. But as the laughter builds, so does the undercurrent. Every quip hides a question. Who owns this stage? Who controls the room? The audience laughs at the surface jokes, but they're also tuned to the tension that hangs just below them. Thin as wire, sharp as glass. Jimmy finally leans forward again, resting his chin lightly on his hand. His voice drops half an octave, casual but pointed. "Wouldn't you say it's a little strange," he asks, "that you're campaigning for an Emmy? Sitting in my chair?" The crowd gasps, then laughs nervously. It's not just a joke anymore. It's a gauntlet thrown. Seth's smile freezes for half a second, then melts into something sly. He tilts his head, eyes glinting under the studio lights. "Strange," he echoes, voice smooth as silk. "Not really. Feels more like home field advantage." The audience roars again, laughter rolling across the studio like thunder. But beneath the applause, the battle lines are clear now. This isn't small talk anymore. This is war, and they're both smiling as it begins. The audience's laughter from the last exchange is still echoing when Jimmy taps his desk twice, sharp and deliberate. It's the kind of tap that says, "Pay attention," even though his grin insists everything is lighthearted. "You know what, Seth?" Jimmy says, voice low but playful. "I think people should see what I'm talking about." For context, the crowd reacts instantly. Gasps, whoops, a collective lean forward. They can sense it. Something's about to happen. Jimmy gestures toward the control booth with the casual confidence of a man who knows he controls the detonator. Roll the tape. The monitors behind him blaze to life. The studio lights dim just enough to make the screen glow brighter, casting pale shadows across Seth's face. A deep, overly serious voiceover fills the room, dripping with the kind of melodrama usually reserved for political smear campaigns. "Real late-night hosts wear ties," the narrator intones gravely. The audience bursts into laughter immediately. The absurdity is clear. It's going to be a parody. Still, the room tightens, curiosity buzzing like static. On screen, clips flash. Jimmy in pristine suits, adjusting a tie knot with exaggerated elegance. Then Seth, casually dressed, collar loose, tie nowhere to be seen. The contrast is obvious, ridiculous, and it lands. The audience giggles, waiting for the punchline. "You know who else never wore ties?" The narrator continues. A beat of silence. "That's right, the guy who invented cargo shorts." The audience howls. A wave of laughter ripples through the crowd, bouncing off the rafters. The image of Seth in his relaxed wardrobe cuts against the gravitas of the narration, and the ridiculous comparison is perfect bait. The video barrels on, each line more absurd than the last. Seth Meyers claims to represent comedy. But can we trust a man who looks like he just left a community college poetry slam? The audience roars again. Even Seth chuckles, shaking his head, lips pressed in a smile that says, "Okay, you got me there," but Jimmy isn't done. The fake ad ramps up, flashing grainy stills of Seth mid-laugh, frozen at unflattering angles, his face overexposed like a tabloid snapshot. The voiceover lands its strike. Seth Meyers. No tie, no class. No Emmy. The last words linger on screen in bold block letters as the band punctuates it with a sharp drum roll. The audience erupts, half cheering, half howling. Some clap, others whistle, and a few gasp in mock shock. Jimmy leans back in his chair, arms spread, soaking it in like a gladiator basking in victory. His grin stretches wide, a king surveying conquered ground. The laugh belongs to him now, and he knows it. Seth, however, sits calmly. Too calmly. His smirk is measured, his eyes glinting under the lights like polished steel. He lets the laughter wash over him, doesn't fight it, doesn't rush to defend himself. He sips from his water glass, slow and deliberate, as if the whole thing has amused him more than it wounded him. The camera cuts between them. Jimmy basking, Seth plotting. The tension is palpable, but the crowd is too busy laughing to notice the current running under the surface. Finally, as the applause begins to taper, Jimmy smirks across the desk. "What do you think, Seth? Fair?" Seth sets the glass down, leans forward slightly, and smiles with the calm assurance of someone who's been waiting for this moment. "Fair," he repeats softly. "Maybe, but you know what they say." He lets the pause stretch, hooks dangling in the air. "If you play with fire, eventually you get burned." The crowd gasps, then bursts into applause again. The tease of a counterattack is clear, and everyone in the room, Jimmy included, feels the balance shift. The war has officially drawn first blood. The applause for Jimmy's ad fades, but the aftershocks are still buzzing through the studio. He's sitting taller now, riding that wave of laughter like a surfer balanced perfectly on the crest. The crowd is still chuckling, some clapping, a few shaking their heads as if they can't believe he went there. But Seth doesn't rush to fill the silence. He lets Jimmy's glow linger a beat too long, like a boxer letting his opponent swing hard and miss. His posture is casual, one ankle perched over a knee, hands folded loosely, but his eyes are alive, sharpened, gleaming with calculation. "Not bad," Seth says finally, his voice smooth and deliberate. The audience chuckles, sensing something brewing. "But you know, Jimmy, campaign ads go both ways." The crowd reacts instantly, a mix of gasps and cheers. Jimmy's smile tightens just slightly, a flicker in the corner of his mouth. He's still grinning, still in control, but he knows what's coming. Seth tilts his head toward the control booth, the smallest nod. "Roll mine." The monitors explode back to life. The lights dim again, plunging the stage into a half-darkness that makes the giant screen burn like a spotlight. This time, the voiceover isn't grave and booming. It's Seth's own voice, calm, sardonic, dripping with razor-sharp timing. "Jimmy Kimmel," Seth begins, "claims to be America's sweetheart of late-night television. But the truth, Jimmy Kimmel laughs at his own jokes." The crowd bursts into laughter right away. The screen flashes with slow-motion clips of Jimmy cracking himself up behind the desk, head thrown back, hand smacking the table. The absurd seriousness of the footage turns the ordinary habit into a comedy crime. The narration continues. Real hosts let the audience laugh. Jimmy? He hogs the punchline every single time. The laughter swells. The images get pettier. Jimmy awkwardly trying to stifle giggles, Jimmy wiping tears of laughter, Jimmy nearly sliding out of his chair from laughing too hard at himself. But Seth isn't done. And when Jimmy isn't laughing at his own jokes, he's stealing other people's snacks. The screen cuts to mock surveillance footage of a fridge in the ABC studio break room, followed by a grainy shot of Jimmy with a mouthful of someone else's yogurt. The audience loses it, roaring, clapping, whistling. It's absurd, childish, and hilarious. Late-night host, or late-night snack thief? Seth's narration concludes. You decide. The screen freezes on a deliberately unflattering shot of Jimmy mid-bite, yogurt spoon frozen near his mouth, eyes wide. Across the image, bold letters appear. Paid for by the committee for a laugh at Jimmy's expense. The audience erupts. It's chaos. Laughter bouncing off the walls, some people standing, others wiping tears from their eyes. The roar is so loud the band can't resist riffing a playful sting in the background. Seth leans back in his chair, expression serene, like a samurai who's just unsheathed his blade without even breaking a sweat. Jimmy forces a laugh, shaking his head, but the glint in his eyes says it all. The counterpunch landed clean. He raises his hands in mock surrender. Wow, surveillance footage? Really? That's what we're doing? Seth smiles, just the faintest curve of lips, his tone polite but edged. Hey, people deserve the truth. The crowd roars again, feeding off the tension that's no longer hidden. The duel isn't playful anymore. It's personal. For the first time tonight, Jimmy doesn't quite own the room. The laughter is still bouncing off the rafters when the cameras cut back to Jimmy's face. He's smiling, wide, polished, practiced, but there's the faintest tightness in his jaw, the smallest flicker in his eyes. He's been hit, and he knows it. He taps his pen against the desk, a soft staccato that the microphones barely catch, but the rhythm betrays him. It's the sound of someone thinking faster than he wants to. You really went with fridge footage? Jimmy asks, grin still plastered on. I mean, what's next? My Amazon history? The crowd laughs, but there's an edge to it now. It isn't the rolling wave of comforted laughter they gave earlier. It's sharper, more expectant. They can sense the shift. The air is buzzing like a storm before lightning. Seth doesn't flinch. He doesn't even break his relaxed posture. He just lifts an eyebrow and lets the silence hang for a second too long, a silence heavy enough to make Jimmy blink. Amazon history? Seth repeats smoothly. I don't need that. The yogurt was enough. The crowd howls. The laughter is louder this time, wilder, almost disobedient. The audience isn't just laughing with Jimmy anymore. They're laughing at him. And in late night, that's blood in the water. Jimmy leans forward, elbows on the desk, chin resting on his knuckles like a man ready to box. His grin turns sharper, his voice lower. You know, Seth, there's something funny about all this. What's that? Seth asks, calm as a still lake. That you're sitting on my stage, Jimmy fires back, making jokes on my turf, and thinking you're winning. The audience gasps. It's not a laugh this time. It's a collective intake of breath, the kind of reaction that makes every head swivel from Jimmy to Seth, waiting for a counterstrike. And Seth delivers. He leans in just slightly, enough for the lights to catch the edge of his smirk. His voice is soft, almost a whisper, but it cuts sharper than any shout. Jimmy, the crowd decides who's winning. Not you. The studio detonates. Applause, laughter, shouts. It all crashes together in a storm of noise that rattles the cameras. People are clapping, stomping, throwing their heads back in disbelief. The duel isn't just playful anymore. It's alive, sparking like static in every corner of the room. Jimmy laughs along, but it's louder than it needs to be. A laugh with a serrated edge. His fingers drum faster on the desk. He's not retreating. He never retreats, but the balance of power has shifted, and everyone in the studio knows it. For a moment, the cameras zoom in on both faces. Jimmy, leaning forward, grin stretched tight, Seth reclining back, calm and smug as though he's sipping on the energy of the room. It looks less like a host interviewing a guest and more like two chess masters mid-match, each waiting for the other to blink. The air hums. The tension is no longer subtle. It's visible, alive, a rope pulled taut between them. Finally, Jimmy straightens up, tapping the desk with 2 deliberate knocks. His smile widens, but his tone sharpens. All right, enough warm-up. You want a real fight? He gestures toward the control booth, eyes flashing. Let's roll my next one. The crowd erupts again, half cheering, half gasping. They know what's coming. Another strike, another escalation. The duel has left banter behind. This is war now, and neither man is stepping back. The audience's buzz hasn't died down from Jimmy's real fight tease when the monitors flare again. The studio lights dim, the band quiets, and a hush spreads across the room like the air before thunder. Jimmy's grin is sharp, almost too sharp, as he gestures casually toward the screen. Let's hear from someone who knows Seth best, Jimmy says, his tone playful but loaded. The screen cuts to a fake interview setup. Soft lighting, a neutral backdrop. And there, sitting stiffly in the chair, is none other than Josh Myers, Seth's real-life younger brother. The crowd gasps, then explodes into laughter. They already know what's coming. Josh stares earnestly into the camera, voice dripping with mock sincerity. Growing up with Seth was tough. He wouldn't let me play with his action figures. He always took the good controllers when we played Mario Kart, and worst of all, he pauses, sighs heavily. He never let me be Han Solo. Ever. I was always Chewbacca. The audience roars. The laughter builds, rolling through the room like an avalanche. Seth shifts in his chair, lips pressed in a tight smile, but his eyes betray it. That glint of, "Are you kidding me right now?" Josh continues. "Seth Meyers doesn't deserve an Emmy. Jimmy Kimmel does." Because Jimmy? He'd at least let me be Han. The punchline detonates. The crowd erupts, clapping, stomping, howling with laughter so loud the cameras shake. Jimmy leans back in his chair, doubled over, smacking the desk in triumph. He's not just landed a joke. He's landed a betrayal. A family betrayal. Seth sits frozen for a moment, expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he turns his head toward Jimmy. His voice is low, measured, each word sharp enough to cut glass. "You used my own brother against me," he says, his tone half mock, half menace. "You cold-blooded snake." The audience loses it all over again. Some are clapping, some are shouting, "Ooh," as though they've just seen someone dunk in a championship game. The energy is chaos. Laughter mixed with disbelief that Jimmy actually pulled family into this war. Jimmy raises both hands in fake innocence, still laughing so hard it looks like he might fall out of his chair. Hey, I didn't force him. He came to me," he insists, but Seth isn't laughing now. His smirk is faint, his eyes sharper than they've been all night. He leans back, tapping a finger once against the armrest of his chair. His voice is calm, dangerously calm. "Fine," he says softly, so softly the microphone has to catch it. "If we're doing family," he turns toward the control booth, a slow, deliberate motion. His lips curve into a smirk that's half promise, half warning. "Soin, let's talk about yours." The crowd explodes into cheers and gasps. People are on their feet, hands in the air, screaming like they're at a wrestling match instead of a late-night show. The energy is volcanic, the tension thick enough to taste. Jimmy's grin falters just slightly, his eyebrows lifting in mock surprise, but behind it there's a flicker of unease. He knows what's about to come, and for the first time tonight, it isn't his move. The studio is alive, the air vibrating with anticipation. The war has escalated past jokes, past ads, past games. Now, it's bloodline versus bloodline, and everyone in the room knows the next strike will hit harder than anything so far. The crowd is still screaming from Seth's threat when the monitors flare again. The room hushes almost instantly, tension slicing the air like a blade. Everyone is waiting. Hungry, wide-eyed, half terrified, half thrilled. The screen brightens to reveal a staged bedroom scene. A woman stands in frame, arms crossed, expression weary but exasperated. The audience gasps as they recognize her. Molly McNerney, Jimmy's wife. The laughter begins before she even speaks. Her voice is tired, almost rehearsed, dripping with mock frustration. "Living with Jimmy Kimmel," she says, "is like living with a distracted raccoon. He leaves Splenda packets everywhere. On the nightstand. In the bathroom. Once, I found one inside the toaster. The crowd howls. Some people clap, some whistle, others slap the arms of their seats. Jimmy's smile freezes into something tighter, though he still nods, pretending to laugh along. Molly continues, relentless. And don't get me started on the reading glasses. 14 pairs, 14, all on the same nightstand. It looks like a LensCrafters exploded in our bedroom. The audience detonates. Laughter pours over the stage like a tidal wave. Jimmy presses his lips together, hiding a wince behind a forced grin. His hands drum the desk faster, betraying nerves he's trying not to show. On screen, Molly delivers the dagger. Jimmy Kimmel, America's funny man. But at home? He can't even find his own glasses. Do we really want a man like that guiding late-night television? The words flash across the screen in bold white letters. Paid for by the Committee of Suffering Spouses. The audience erupts. Some are standing now, doubled over with laughter, others wiping tears from their faces. The roar is deafening. Seth leans back in his chair, serene. watching the chaos unfold like a general enjoying the collapse of his opponent's fortress. Jimmy claps his hands together once, hard, in mock surrender. All right. He laughs, though the laugh cracks just slightly. Dragging my wife into this? That's low, Seth. That's low. Seth tilts his head, smirk never fading. His reply is soft, almost gentle, which only makes it cut deeper. Hey, you brought my brother. Family's fair game. The audience screams again, laughter and applause crashing together like thunder. The duel has hit a new level. Not just jokes, not just ads, but intimate. Brutal mock confessions aired out for the world. Jimmy shakes his head, still smiling but with beads of sweat forming along his temple under the lights. You really think that wins you the night? He says, voice playful but edged. Seth shrugs lightly, his calm unshaken. I don't need to think, he replies smoothly. The audience already decided. The cameras capture the perfect contrast. Jimmy laughing loud and wide but his eyes darting nervously toward the crowd. Seth sitting still, collected, smirk curling like a blade. For the first time all evening, the room belongs entirely to Seth Meyers. The laughter doesn't just fill the studio. It shakes it. People are stomping, clapping, hollering, riding the high of comedy that feels too raw, too unscripted, too dangerous to be anything but magic. And under that storm of noise, Jimmy's smile flickers. For a moment, just a moment, he knows he's no longer the one holding the reins. The duel has tipped. The challenger owns the room. The roar from Molly's exploding LensCrafters line is still rattling the rafters when Jimmy straightens up again. He's sweating now, but his grin has sharpened. The grin of a man who refuses to go down without dragging the whole stadium into the mud with him. He wipes at his brow with a mock flourish, shakes his head and leans toward the control booth. His voice is steady, theatrical, laced with challenge. All right, Seth, you got the wife, but I've been saving one. Just one. Roll it, the monitors burst to life again. The dramatic campaign-style music booms louder than before, echoing through the studio like a drumline at war. But this time, the visuals are different, brighter, innocent. The screen flickers to a classroom backdrop. A group of kids sit at desks, solemn-faced, staring into the camera with wide, accusing eyes. The crowd bursts into laughter instantly. The absurdity is already clear. A little girl with pigtails leans forward, voice trembling with mock sadness. Seth Meyers and Jimmy Kimmel care more about shiny trophies than they care about us. The audience howls. The ridiculousness is perfect, the juxtaposition hysterical. Another boy pipes up, frowning gravely. Would you really give an award to a dad who forgets his own kid's birthday? He pauses, then adds, because Jimmy did. The crowd gasps, then detonates into laughter, clapping, stomping, some people literally falling against their neighbors in disbelief. Jimmy's face glows under the lights, torn between faux outrage and barely controlled glee. Then a third child chimes in, her tone heartbreakingly earnest. Seth once promised to read us a bedtime story, but he fell asleep halfway through. The crowd is in chaos now. It's too absurd, too exaggerated, and that's why it lands like a hammer. Even the band members can't keep straight faces. A trumpet player doubles over laughing, drums rattling as the beat collapses mid-song. The narration voice returns, syrupy and grim. 2 men, 2 egos, countless victims, paid for by our emotional well-being. The words blaze across the screen in bold white text. The laughter peaks, shaking the studio to its bones. People are slapping their knees, wiping tears, stomping their feet in unison. The absurdity has hit its absolute apex. Late-night parody turned into full-blown mock tragedy. Jimmy is doubled over his desk now, laughing so hard he can barely breathe. He slaps the desk, wheezing, "Oh my God. Okay, that's too far." Seth is laughing too, but it's slower, more measured. He leans back in his chair, arms folded, a smile stretched across his face. His laugh is the laugh of someone who knows he's witnessing the perfect punchline, one so outrageous it transcends the battle. The cameras catch them both in the same shot. Jimmy shaking his head, Eyes wet with laughter, Seth leaning back calm and collected, a smirk of quiet victory on his face. The audience won't stop. The noise is manic, wild, alive, the kind of laugh that becomes an ovation in disguise. Finally, Jimmy manages to straighten up, wiping a tear from his eye. "Okay," he says breathlessly. "I think we traumatized fake children for ratings." The crowd roars again. Seth glances toward him, still smirking, and delivers the final dagger with calm precision. Worth it. The laughter crescendos one last time, deafening, unstoppable. The absurdity of it all has boiled over into something unforgettable. And in that madness, one thing is clear. The war has reached its peak. The only thing left now is the end game. The storm of laughter from the kids' ad still shakes the studio when the cameras cut back to the desk. Jimmy is slumped forward, wiping tears from his face, gasping for air between laughs. Seth is leaned back, composed, smiling faintly, the picture of quiet control. For a long moment, neither man speaks. The audience is still roaring, applause mingling with shouts, the energy a wild cocktail of chaos and delight. Then slowly, the laughter begins to ebb, replaced by a hum of anticipation. Everyone knows it can't go higher. The duel has peaked. The only thing left now is the fallout. Jimmy leans back in his chair, pressing a hand against his chest like he's steadying his heartbeat. That, he breathes between chuckles, was insane. His voice carries no bite now, just awe. Seth Meyers, ladies and gentlemen, the man who dragged fake kids into a late-night war. The audience erupts again, cheering, clapping, whistling. The battle is over, but the applause lingers like aftershocks of an earthquake. Seth grins, calm as ever. He tilts his head toward Jimmy, his tone smooth but soft. "You started it," he says simply, his words balanced between humor and quiet triumph. The crowd laughs warmly, no longer the sharp, chaotic laughter of competition, but the gentler kind that fills in after a storm. Applause rolls through the studio, steady and affectionate, like waves smoothing sand after a tidal surge. Jimmy shakes his head, still smiling. "I can't believe we actually did that. You, me, the ads, the fridge yogurt, your brother, my wife, fake children testifying against us. We might have gone too far." Seth shrugs, the smirk never leaving his face. "Maybe, but at least it was worth it." The audience cheers again. The band plays a soft riff in the background, a melody that feels like a deep exhale after holding a breath too long. The tension that gripped the studio for nearly half an hour dissolves into warmth, the kind of atmosphere that only comes when the fight has been fair and the ending flawless. For a few seconds, the cameras capture the contrast perfectly. Jimmy still flushed, loud, eyes shining with leftover adrenaline. Seth composed, cool, smiling faintly, his victory understated but undeniable. Then, like a curtain drop, both laugh at the same time. Genuine, unforced, two craftsmen recognizing each other's brilliance. Jimmy adjusts his jacket, clears his throat, and finally turns back to the crowd. His voice is lighter now, more familiar. "Ladies and gentlemen," he says, gesturing across the desk, "give it up for Seth Meyers." The audience rises to their feet in a thunderous ovation. Seth stands, shaking Jimmy's hand. The grip is firm, sincere. No longer a duel, no longer a jab, just respect. For a brief second, they hold each other's gaze, grinning, exhausted, united by the madness they just unleashed. Two men who didn't trade punches but timing, wit, and spectacle, and somehow turned a talk show into a battlefield worthy of an epic. The lights above soften, catching in their eyes. The crowd keeps clapping, unwilling to let it end. Seth leans closer, just enough for the mic to pick it up. "You survived," he says quietly, teasing but warm. Jimmy smirks back, adjusting his tie. "Barely." The audience laughs one final time, not roaring, not wild, but soft, lingering, appreciative. The kind of laugh that feels like applause. The band swells into the closing theme. The cameras pan wide, framing both men against the glowing set. Rivals, allies, survivors of a comedy war. The clapping slows, fading into a rhythm that sounds almost like gratitude. As the credits roll, Jimmy glances sideways, still smiling. "Good game," he says under his breath. Seth nods once, returning the grin. "Always." The applause stretches on, echoing like the last rumble after a storm. And then, finally, it fades, leaving two hosts, two masters, side by side in the calm after the chaos.